join me in welcoming Clyde.
Can you hear me? Is my mic on? Okay. My presentation tonight is basically going to be about the Everglades, but I'm going to start out with a little history, so you know where I came from, and then we'll get into the Everglades. Because sometimes it's kind of nice to know where someone is coming from. I started young. This was about 1951. My folks took me to most of the national parks when I was 8, 9, 10. I really got a feel for that. I've always been in nature. Mother was always looking for me. She'd find me in some woods or some hole of water somewhere. Then, when I went to college, I decided to be an architect. Now, I was really a mathematician, and I couldn't draw very well. So, what I started doing was building architectural models and photographing them for the presentation of my designs in school. So I built a little camera. This is a little camera. It's actually the size of a piece of 35mm film, which I could put inside the models. Now, this is a model. From floor to ceiling is 6 inches. This was done in 1964, before computers. That's my wife and myself by the pottery back there. And this was the scene going from the lobby into the theater. The theater, the screen there is my sweater. So you get to scale. All the chairs were like toilet paper rolls cut up. So because they were round, you know. So, and in this particular project, those benches are 3 inches long. Okay. This was in Palo Alto. In Palo Alto, they didn't want any high rises, so this was a really, this was in '65. So in this presentation I did, those 4 guys are the city commissioners. And when I showed this slide in the presentation to them, they were so interested in how they got in this picture that they passed the project. This was before gray hair. Actually, this was a very huge model. This is like twice the scale of the other ones. But I thought it was kind of fun to stick my head in there. Now, when I was in school, I started in 1960. In 1961, I started dating my wife to be Nikki, and her family was really interested in Yosemite. And so I was dating her and playing architecture at the same time. I saw Ansel Adams' work in his gallery in '61. Moonrise over Hernandez was $75 for a 16x20 original sign. I tried photographing Yosemite then, and I couldn't figure it out. So I have a very connection to Yosemite because of my dating my wife and coming up with the idea that maybe photographing nature was kind of interesting. So I've been working on Yosemite from about 2000, going back to photograph. Gray hair here though. This is a 6x10 camera I just had made, so it's a little lighter. I can carry it around here. And so this was done just before I did the presentation here in October. This was just this year. And I went back. I wanted to take this picture at Glacier Point. The fog was there. The other days I was there, it was bright sun. So, typical picture. I'm there for about 5 hours in this fog, and finally it cleared and got a nice shot. I think that shows you the valley. So that gives you an idea of what I'm trying to do. This was in 2006. This looks like a simple shot, but I was there for about 3 hours waiting for the right light to hit half dome. Now, in Florida, I'm not in the water all the time, but also the water isn't 38 degrees. But I had to be there to get this angle, to get this picture. So you have to do what you have to do, Now, another thing about Yosemite that was interesting, it was the first basically park in the United States. And most of the parks that have been developed, the water flows down to the city. So you're getting all this nice fresh water from these national parks. But the Everglades, all this human waste flows into it. So we're having a real problem with that. And when they designed the park, built the park, they figured put a fence around it. Water doesn't care about fences. So we're really having a project to try and restore it. So you got all this great water going down to San Francisco and LA. This I thought was kind of an interesting philosophy, I think, on photographers that are trying to do something with their work rather than just taking pictures. Now we had a lady, it's called Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She wrote the book in 1947, The Rivers of Grass. And then about 1972, she got interested. They finally figured out we're having problems. And she started her environmental movement. She was 78 when she started. And she's 101 here. And she's as sharp as a tack. Like I can tell you some stories what happened when Senator Graham came in. And, he had just voted for a sugar subsidy for the sugar people, and that's what's obviously polluting the Everglades, the sugar people, and the residential people. And this is one of the first pictures I took, and it was really a good illustration of what's wrong with the Everglades. This is a beautiful picture, but that's all cattails, which means there's too much nutrients. Everglades is just like the coral reefs. It's a nutrient-poor system. Now, I'm going to start our presentation on the Everglades at Disney World. This gives you an idea of the Everglades. It actually starts at Disney World and Reedy Creek, and the Nature Conservancy was given this property from a, what do you call it, where Disney messed up a bunch of property, and then they gave it back. They gave the land a fix. This is where Reedy Creek comes out for Disney, and the first lake it goes into is Lake Russell. And Lake Russell is, I've become an expert on mud. But this lake is actually a sand bottom, and you can walk the lake without any problem. And I usually walk it with the canoe with my camera, not for me, because I don't want to get in and out of the canoe. So I walk the canoe around these lakes, because everything I have to do is large format. Typical exposure in bright sun is 1 second. So you can't hand hold it 1 second. You have to have a tripod, it has to be on the ground. But all of Florida is really a fascinating place that you think you're back, in the primeval dinosaur period. I mean, the things you can photograph, the things that nature does is just amazing. So it goes from that lake and into prairies, which are now filtering the water, because the grass is what filters water. I'll hopefully explain that a little later on. And then, of course, there's oak hammocks. Down in Florida, our elevations changes by inches, not feet. Like this is about 4 feet higher than normal. And the pines are about 2 feet. So you go from, then the cabbage palms are about 1 foot. So you're about every foot there's a change of ecosystems. Where in the mountains it's usually about every 1,000 feet. It's a change of ecosystems. And occasionally you just have to cool off. When you're carrying this stuff around in August, this was August in Reedy Creek, and it's the water. It's probably 94 degrees, 94% humidity. That water is about 78 degrees. So it really cools you off. Now here, we're starting to go out of Reedy Creek into a series of creeks that go into Lake Kissimmee. This is the end of Reedy Creek. And this is a whole series of little creeks that go into Lake Kissimmee. As you can see, I'm always in the water. This is a shot that I wish I could have taken a picture of me taking the picture. My wife takes all these pictures. But what I had to do, we were in a pontoon boat. What I had to do is I want the camera with this angle, so that was actually the camera was on the pontoon boat. And this was like a one minute exposure. So imagine shooting in a boat, 1 minute exposure. So I tied I guess it would be the port side up to the knees, set the tripod on the camera up, my wife on top, I got underneath the boat and held the boat up with my head. Just steady it. It actually came out sharp. This is called Dead Man's Creek. People here do airboating, and the curves are so much they kill people about once a year here because they run into each other. Now, one of the things people think gators and snakes are dangerous. That was scary. This guy was cooking at about 30 knots at about a 3 to 5 foot wake, and I'm saying, is he going to wipe me out? But luckily he slowed down. So and then he took it off, and I got the picture. Now we're heading down to Lake Kissimmee, which is the next major lake in the system. As you can see, this is August, had the great storms, nice lightning. It's just a beautiful area. The whole lake is not more than probably, the deepest spot's probably 10 feet. And this is called Brahma Island, where it's a hunting preserve. They have all these exotic animals, and so you can hunt them any time of year because they're from Africa. So in fact, Johnny Dent was he came there. His father's from Fort Lauderdale. They asked, he wanted to come photograph, and they said, this guy was something else. He shot a pig and chewing tobacco. Hey, they just love this guy, Johnny Depp. they got a kick out of him. So this gives you an idea of the broadness, and the whole lake is full of this grass and pads. And then on the sides of the lake, you have the cypress and the oak trees. So it's just like 5 feet higher. Now this gives you an idea that the main problem we have was with this is Kissimmee River. Now this area that's all like mowed down here, that used to be a canal. So the state of Florida and the federal government are trying to restore it. All you see on the right is the way it used to look. So what they actually have done is, because when you have a winding creek, it will filter the water. If you have a straight ditch, just like the ditch that comes in from the Colorado River here, it's just a straight ditch. It doesn't filter anything. And this is what happens when it starts being restored. The water overflows and creates these marshes again. And everything is starting to come back. The birds, there was like 3 species, now there's 14. The whole thing is one of the major project of restoration of wetlands in the world. People from all over the world, even California, come out to investigate what we're doing there. Now, the fellow on the airboat on the left there is Eon Stolzis. We've done 4 PBS specials together, and this is the 5th one. We're working on a PBS special on Lake Kissimmee. So he's doing the documentary with video, and I'm doing the documentary with the camera. And what we do is we usually have obviously a documentary film and a traveling show. So this film and show goes around to museums and public spaces all over Florida to help educate people about Florida. And they took us all around airboats. You really can't get around in a regular boat. In fact, we got lost a couple of times. And these guys have been there a long time. They the ones that did this, they get lost. Because men, I mean, how many men ask directions? You know, oh, I think I know where we're at, you know. Well, we spent a couple hours trying to figure out where we're at. In fact, this is one of the areas we were really lost in. But we found this little neat spot. The problem with the dry areas, we have diamondback rattlers, just like you have here in California. And it's all tall grass, you really can't see anything. So, I don't know if you saw, there's a couple of vultures there. We have a lot of vultures in Florida, which means it's good. We have a good system. We have a lot of vultures. Now, there's one major creek going into Kissimmee River, and it's Lake Istapoca. I'm here. This is a long time ago. This is probably 1989. My hair hasn't gone completely white, but I'm standing here waiting. I don't know if you've ever been in a storm. But what happens when a storm in Florida comes? You'll have the storm pulling in the air, and then when it hits, it's pushing the air. And between that, pulling and pushing, there's usually between 10 and 30 seconds of stillness. So that's what I wait for, because I'm shooting like, 1-second exposures. And I don't want all this moss moving. I was there for about 4 hours, kept sinking deeper and deeper. I got to the point where I thought I was stuck. And our boat had a little 2-horse on it, wasn't going to pull us out. And I finally discovered if you ever get stuck in the mud, you got water, you just keep turning and turning until you create a little hole around you, and you can float right out. So don't panic, just keep working at it. Now this shot here, the next day I came back, the fishermen don't like water moccasins because they catch their fish. And next day I came back, and there must have been 15 to 20 carcasses they had killed where I was walking. Pretty spooky. These things were so huge you could take a canoe out of that thing. Now, one of the places that I really got into Florida was called Fish Eating Creek. This was in 1984. Tom Gaskin had this little place that he sold cypress knees, cypress knee lamps, cypress knee clocks. One of those typical tourist places. And his son took it over later. But this is where I first connected with Florida. And this was '84. This is one of the first shots I took. Because when I was shooting in California, I started in black and white and then went to color. So I was shooting color in Florida when I first got there. So this was a color shot I did. And then through the years, I've been back with my black and white to take different times, different areas. This is a really this is the only creek that natural creek that goes in Lake Okeechobee. Man has really messed up Florida. We've dug, I don't know how many miles of canals to control the water, which makes it good for flooding, but it's not good for nature. And this we're going into now, this is Lake Okeechobee. People think it's all water. Well, there's a lot of marshes in Lake Okeechobee. Back in the early days, people said you could see a dime on the bottom here. It was so clean. We went across this with our boat in 2004, and we pumped some water out for our head. We couldn't tell which was coming in and which was going out. It was like, well, shit coming in from the water. It was really bad. Now again, the canoe is for your camera, not for you. Now this, I'm working down into what's called the conservation area. This is an area where we're trying to purify the water from the sugar people. It comes down to the Everglades. And again, you have to walk through it, and this is actually, that stuff you see in the bottom of the picture is 4 feet under the water. That's how clear it is. The Everglades is probably clearer than any Rocky Mountain stream. But this gives you a good idea what the river grass is like. There's a lot of scientific stuff I can tell you about, but I don't want to, it's too complicated. Now, from there, we go to, it's called, sometimes your mind just stops, you know. Loxahatchee River. Now, Loxahatchee River is probably one of the prettiest places in Florida, and it's got a lot of gators. And I'm walking the canoe down this place. But I think, I worked on this project for 3 years before I got 2 hours of the right conditions. Because these are all 6-minute exposures. So that means nothing can move for 6 minutes. So you have to have overcast and no wind. I mean, this is as close to the Amazons you're going to get in America. It's a pretty wild place. Absolutely gorgeous. You feel, it's just amazing with the feeling you get there. Now, from there, the water goes down to Fort Lauderdale. This is called North Fork of the New River. Back when they first started agriculture in the Everglades in the 1900, they brought their vegetables down Fort Lauderdale with this river. And there's still places in Fort Lauderdale, if you've been to Fort Lauderdale, that are like, this is in Fort Lauderdale city limits. It was not easy to find. And the water, I'm the anchor too, see. So I'm holding the boat. But this, they were restoring this. The water management was coming in here. This is where they used to dump all the sewer in Fort Lauderdale. And I itched for about a month after this. It was, but this is in downtown Fort Lauderdale, not downtown, but it's just outside of downtown Fort Lauderdale. Now from here we're going to go down to Everglades National Park. Now, in 1947, the Miami Herald asked its reporters to do a story on the different rivers of Florida. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas wanted to do one on the Everglades. And so she said, well, we'll call it a river of grass. That's how it got its name, because she had to write an article about a river. So she created this term river of grass, which it is. This is a little 11 by 14. This is, Nikki was taking this picture. She has a backpack on with the film. The film weighs probably as much or more than the camera. And this is on the way to this called Movie Dome. Movie Dome is one of these really great little swamp areas. It's just a bundle of pictures I can take in here. Now you can see on the right there's a camera bag. That's got 4 film holders in it. which weighs 30 pounds, just 4 film holders. And then the other rail pack is for the camera, and I'm carrying the lenses too, tripod. All the gear together is probably 100, 125 pounds. Digital will be a lot easier. But if you know digital, if you scan this to film quality, it's 1,000 megabytes. To give you an idea of the difference between the digital and the film. But it's sometimes pretty silly carrying this big camera around. But you can get some nice photographs with it. I mean, this is junk. I mean, this is really prehistoric. You think it's dinosaurs coming on the horizon anytime in this area, you know. Now this is called a cigar orchid, or they have a different name for it, cow orchid or something like that. And this is one of the biggest ones that I've ever seen. It's in the Everglades National Park, but you've got to get through some white mangroves to get to this. If you ever walk through white mangroves, the mud is about 2.5 to 3 feet deep. And it's quite a project to get across those. But it was, most of these plants are like, this is huge. This thing has been around since the 40s. And the park people don't want anybody to know where it's at, because it's a very historical plant. The main plants in Florida are pines and palmettos. It's not palm trees. But they could just nice stuff with that. I'm here, I was in the Everglades National Park on this particular shooting session for a month. And so each morning there was different things happening. So, you know, you get different kinds of scenes and such. But luckily this was actually right after Wilma. And for some reason, Wilma blew all the mosquitoes out. It was really great. The next adventure we're going to is Big Cypress. Big Cypress, what they're calling Everglades National Park, is the East Everglades now. And we're kind of the middle Everglades, and then the West Coast is called the West Everglades. This is our gallery. We're midway, we're 46 miles from Publix in Naples and 46 miles from Publix in Miami. The house is in the back, which we rent out as a vacation place for 2 days minimum. A lot of people, well, this is one of my first photographs that I took when I went to black and white in Big Cypress. This was just after my son was killed in an auto accident, and that's when I kind of went off, you know, and went to the woods just to refresh myself. And that's when I dropped all my color work. I took about $300,000 or $400,000 worth of prints to the dump, all my color stuff, dumped it, changed it back to black and white. One of the typical questions when people come to the gallery from photographers is, where do I go to photograph? And I say, well, our parking lot. This is a picture of our parking lot. And this is another picture of our parking lot. And people get upset because, you know, there is no set pictures in Florida. It's all a biological landscape. This is in the backyard behind the house. Gorgeous spot. I worked on this for about 3 years before I got a shot of this. Half the time I couldn't find it again. You know, I get misplaced. And sometimes you just got to cool off. I tell you, the water is so nice. I'll lay there sometimes for half an hour to an hour because you get so heated up. You just got to get cooled down or you faint. This is one of the first times I learned how to photograph. This next photograph I took, the camera kept moving during the exposure. Again, this is a 6-minute exposure. I couldn't figure out why the cameras I get double images on the negative. I worked this for 2 weeks, and I finally discovered when you're in a muddy area, you have to float in the water. You can't touch the bottom. I was 8 feet away, and just moving from one side to the other would move a branch or something and would move the camera. So I ended up having to float in the water, count for 1001, 1002 for 6 minutes, and then you swim up to the camera and turn it off. So that was kind of, this was one of my first experiences of how to really have to photograph it. Now this is where I met our little gator. That's an interesting experience, 12-footer. Now, all my bird photography is from the porch. This is the porch from our house, which, like I say, is a rental now. And these were all taken from the porch. If you sit there long enough, you'll see everything. We have, about 3 summers ago, a bear stole Nikki's purse out of the car. We have panthers there. We have bobcats. We have coons. We have otters. We have everything you can think of back in the backyard there. And walking around the big cypress. Now, there's an interesting thing about this picture. If you think about the Everglades, you can see my shoes. People think you're going to sink, and I mean, most of the Everglades is rock. It's not good. When you get into the tall trees, is when there's a lot of mud. So you stay out in these prairies, most of it's rock. And storms is what I love in Florida. This was one year during this winter time it was wet, which is unnormal, which is really a fun time. Some of the skies you get there. Now the thing about this picture is really kind of neat. This was sunset. If you ever try to get out of the Everglades at sunset, then you got a 2.5-hour walk in the dark. That's spooky. And the birds down there, this is about 7 miles from the gallery. This is about 12 miles from the gallery. I can do most everything I want from the gallery. This gives you an idea of what it looks like when it's dry. That's all limestone. And when it's water's up, it's as clear as a mountain stream. Because it's rock. This is called Gator Hook. This is the one, well actually we have 2 paths. Everglades National Park has boardwalks. Big Cypress has 1 half-mile boardwalk. We have 2 trails. One is the Florida Trail. And the Florida Trail, it's about 2 feet of water, if you call that a trail. But this is called Gator Hook, and there's actually a little trail here, so you can that's the only trails that I've ever seen there. If not on those 2 trails, I've been photographing since 1986 in Big Cypress. I've never met another person. You can't say that about Yosemite. Now, I can't hardly see it, but towards the right side there's a big 10-foot gator there. And when the water's low like this, they're very protective. And I moved around the other side to take this picture, and he's right in that pond. About every little while he'll pop up and look at me. So my wife is keeping an eye on him, so if he starts charging, I can run. But that's the dangerous time in the Everglades is when the water's low, because the animals are protective. They're looking for what food's left. Snakes are crawling around everywhere. Everything is looking for water. So I try to stay out. Normally I wouldn't do this, but I wanted to shoot this low water. I try to stay out in May. May is really not a very good month. That's when the dry period, and that's where all the animals are mating. Have you ever been up in the mountains when the deer are mating? They'll charge you. Mating season. But this was our little guy that I've had to contend with for several times. This is our backyard. He's about 30 feet from me right here. But I use this canoe to transport the camera gear. It's really difficult to carry it, and so if I can, I use the canoe. This is a pond I photographed back in, gosh, 2001, I can't find it again. I've been looking for that thing for 5 years, I can't find it. Now this is Turner River, gosh. There's only 8 inches of water here. I went about 3/4 of a mile to photograph the mangrove tunnel. To there and back, it took 7 hours walking through this mud. I was beat, I tell you. But I wanted to get there in low water so you can see the roots coming down all the way and get the feeling of that tunnel. Now that tunnel takes you out to the 10,000 islands where all the mangroves are and oyster beds. And I don't know if you can see again, I'm the anchor. See the ropes there? That's it. Because of that big camera, you have to have someplace to put all the gear, and I put it in the boat and carry the boat with me. But you see, by being in the water, you get that feeling of being there. I mean, it's just, yeah, if you could give you a little bit of the spark of the lightning and give you a memory. It's exciting. This mangrove, Andrew took it away. And the other mangroves are almost all gone because of all different hurricanes. Hurricanes keep changing the whole system. This is an old mangrove, and it survived so far all the hurricanes that have come through. It's an oldie, probably 500 years old. This now is going down to Florida Bay, which is basically the end of the Everglades on the East Coast. Now, how many people here have watched a cloud build and blow up? I mean, it's fascinating. It's starting to build here, and then here it's blowing up. It took about 4 hours, and the fellow I was out with lived there for 25 years, so he never sat down and watched a cloud do its thing. So sometimes in nature, you just have to be patient and sit down and watch and feel. Now, this storm was cooking. These clouds, I don't think, are more than 500 feet off the water. And it was cooking through there. It was really spooky. So the whole area is really fun to photograph if you don't get killed by lightning. Oh, this is one of the, I think, you might say, the mysterious areas of the Everglades. This is Fakahatchee. Fakahatchee has most orchids and bromeliads in North America. I'm not really a biologist, but there's something like 27 varieties of orchids and 30 varieties of bromeliads, which are air plants. It's a mysterious place to work in and to go through. And one of they call this the cathedral. These are called Guzmania Cathedral. And one of the flowers that everybody wants to see is a ghost orchid. There is no leaves on the ghost orchid. It comes out with a spike. And this one here was taken Saturday morning. We were there Friday. You have to realize it takes 2 hours to get here to the swamp. It's not something you can just see off the road. And it was starting to come out Saturday morning. It hasn't even come out yet. See the ears going around that? It hasn't come all the way out. We went back Sunday and a deer already ate it. Now this is the same orchid, a different year. This was a wet year. Oops, what happened here? Okay, oh, I screwed up here. Sorry about that. This was a dry year. So depending on the wetness of the year, it kind of gives a different form. This was so sagged full of water. I was trying to keep them. There was so much humidity in the air. My glasses were fogged. My lens was fogged. My ground glass was fogged. My loop was fogged. It was a challenge photographing that guy.
Now you can see there's no leaves. It looks like some pulleys. See, like worms on the tree or something. It's just like a root. There's no leaves. All the activity happens in the roots. All the what do you call it? Who makes the stuff? Anyhow, I'm not a biologist. Photosynthesis. There we go. It's an amazing plant. And it's really a wonderland in there. I mean, it's spooky, but really a neat place to walk through. We're with a group of other photographers here. You can see now, here's an area you can't have a canoe, so you've got to carry everything on your back. And normally there's no place to put anything down. So Nikki's with me, and what she'll do is she'll get the camera out, she'll get a lens out, get the loop out. She's kind of like my nurse, you know, and then brings the film. So it's really a team project, and it's without my wife, we've been married 47 years. Throw that in. I couldn't do this without Nikki. Nikki is an artist too, and between the two of us, we're quite a team. Again, this is just a magic place there. Mushrooms, those are there for a day and they're gone. This one log here, which mushrooms are, is one of my identifying trees to find the ghost orchid. So you have, you know, this is a tree hit by lightning, and so it's how you. I'm not into the GPS thing yet. It's that man thing again, you know. We can find it. Neil and Jackie, wife. I don't know who else was this that New Year's. New Year's we usually go out in the swamp. And after a while, Neil says, "Haven't we seen that same tree 3 times?" So we're, you know, I've never gotten lost, just misplaced. And then from this, it goes into the wetlands, and then goes back into the 10,000 Islands. This is called the Western Everglades. This is on the western side, which is actually the area where they're really putting more money into restoring for some reason than the Eastern Everglades, because there's not as many people involved. When you have people involved, you know, you're talking money, real estate, farming, and it's tough to share nature with people. And Florida has all this water, but yet we really don't have a lot. I mean, how deep is Tahoe? A couple thousand feet, or? Well, the deepest place we have in Florida, I think, is the lake is like 18 feet. So it's all surface water. So you see a lot of water, but there's not really a lot of water. Does that make any sense? So we have to really work on trying to, we have a lot of programs in Florida buying property. We spend 10 times the amount of money in buying property than California does for nature, for preserving. We spend a lot of money in Florida because we know it's an important part of our life to be able to have civilization there. Now we're going to go back to the gallery. This is the front pond. Now, this is one of my call it ecological talks here. All the lights in my gallery are LEDs. I went from 12,000 watts of lights to 1,200. My electrical bill went from $350 a month to $160 because it's also saving air conditioning. It was 11,000 watts of heat the lights were creating. Because incandescent lights are 10% light and 90% heat. LEDs are 10% heat and 90% light. It was $6,000. Now this was a long time ago. They're a lot less than that now. Put these lights in. Between the electricity I save, they're supposed to last for 10 years. I use them how long I use them. And the bulbs that I don't have to replace, from a $6,000 investment, I'll make a $50,000 profit. Now, that's how you sell the environment, making money. And I'm making money here. Spend a little to make a little. I'll spend a little to make a lot. So, it's very important. Now, we've had some interesting people in swamps in our gallery. Now, I don't know how my wife got this photograph. Because he's shooting digital. He's got his Canon, $7,000 Canon, you know, he's shooting digital. We're going through the whole gallery, and he said, "Why do you use this large format camera? Isn't it difficult?" And I asked him, "Well, why did you run for president?" And he was cracked up. He knew exactly what I thought. Anything worthwhile is doing well. I just got through some pretty deep water with the president and his family. This was fun with the Secret Service, though. They had this 10-minute. They were paranoid. They were really paranoid. And they had this 10-minute walk figured out. And we got to the point where they wanted to come back, and I said to the president, they want us to go this way. The Secret Service wants us to go this way, but if we go straight, the water gets deeper, it's beautiful. They don't want us to go that way. He says, well, don't listen to them. We're going to go this way. So we all start taking off. Of course, the Secret Service went the other way. And all of a sudden, they look back, the president's gone. Little panic time. So we give even normal people swamp walks. We give two major ones, one on Labor Day weekend and President's Day weekend. One on Labor Day weekend, we usually have, what, 800 people? 900 people? And then on the President's Day, we usually have about 500 people. But every Saturday now, we're doing individual walks with small groups. So if you want to do a swamp walk, just call the gallery, we'll put you up. And 2000, this is my wife, Neil, son-in-law, and Jackie, my daughter. Jackie and Neil came to work with us in 2000 because they thought that we're doing more than just making money. We're telling a story. We do all these projects. When we work for PBS specials, we work with magazines, conservation magazines. Everything we do is for free, just like Annenberg. And this is a picture that we put in the Fort Lauderdale airport, 6 foot by 16 foot. And then we have another gallery in Venice. The gallery in Venice is where the darkroom is, where we mount the pictures, frame them. So we have basically two galleries. This gives you an idea of some of the cameras they use. One on the very bottom left is a little pinhole, 12 by 20, 4 by 5 on the right, 8 by 10. The one in the center of the bottom is the 6 by 10. Now the one just to the right of us, an 8 by 10. My 6 by 10 weighs 7 pounds, and the 8 by 10 weighs 17 pounds. So the film holders are twice as much weight. So I'm getting older, so I'm trying to be able to keep carrying this stuff. And then it's processing each sheet of film. In 2006, I was doing this project called America the Beautiful. I was out for 3.5 months, shot 1,700 sheets of film. Took 2 months just to process the film. A month before I saw any really proofs. And my wife comes back at the end of the day, their digital camera, and shows me all the pictures she's taken. It's a little frustrating sometimes, a little frustrating. But this is kind of like, you know, I've been doing this for 50 years, and it's kind of like, you know, it's hard to change an old dog, new tricks sometimes. So, And these are some of the, we have 9 enlargers in the darkroom. The darkroom is 2,200 square feet. Our new home we just built is 940 square feet. With 4,600 watts of solar, all LED lights. We have 32 lights in the house. If you turn every light on the house, it's 160 watts. 32 lights. So you get an idea how much electricity we're not using. Now these enlargers, this one right here, I bought from the Miami Herald. They bought it in 1930. $50,000. 1930. I got it for $300. and I should have charged it. It's so heavy to carry it away. But the light source I put on top of it was $6,000. I had to have it specially made. I call this Big Bertha. This will take up the 12 by 20 negatives. Again, this was actually free. This was a camera in a print shop they were throwing away. So I took the ground glass out the back and adapted another light source, which was another $6,000 for that. It has a 16-foot rail with a moving easel on it. So I can do 5-foot by 8.5-foot prints on that easel. And then sinks, 10 gallons per sink. A lot of chemistry. So each sink is actually a tray. Then we have a high-tech system of drying. But you have to realize, 52-inch paper expands 2 inches when it's wet. And it shrinks 2 inches when it dries. So all these clamps actually move as it dries. So it looks like a plain old clothesline, but it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. This is my wife and I. We just love the Everglades. It's really a neat place. And they say she would like to have been here, but somebody had to take care of the grandkids. Now this, actually a friend of mine took this picture of me in 2002, Oscar Thompson, which was he was the person that really got me involved in the Everglades. And he died of a heart attack in 2002, 55 years old. Great shape. I couldn't keep up with him. He's 6th generation Floridian. He could walk on top of the swamp, on the mud. I'm sinking in a foot. He's walking on top. Don't know how he did it. But this was one of the last pictures, and I think it's really a good feeling, this picture. Now this is a shot that I would have liked to have taken. Now, one of the things we have a problem with is that the world is round. I don't know how many people believe that or know that. But everything we do comes around, whether it's in Russia or America or wherever it's at. So we have to think of it as a place where our little home.
If you're taking such long exposures, how come you don't have any ripples in the water?
Well, actually, he said basically, why are there no ripples in the water? Actually, there are. If you look at that one when I was in the swamp waiting and floating, before I started shooting, before I was laying in the water, it was perfectly flat. And when I'm in the water, laying down, counting my 6 minutes, all of a sudden I'm seeing slight ripples. It was my heart beating, creating ripples. And then on the Loxahatchee ones, because it was a 6-minute exposure, the water was moving and it looked like ice. It was moving so much.
The next question over here to your left. Over here. Over here. Yes.
Okay.
I was just curious, what does Big Bertha take a picture of, and how do you handle such large negative film without exposing it?
Well, Big Bertha is a camera or larger that puts my negative in and make a print. Now, if you see the other ones on the Van Girls where I had the big camera,
That's the camera that film is used for that enlarger. The camera is a 12 by 20, which kind of looks like a TV set when you're out there, except everything's upside down backwards.
And how do you keep everything so, I mean,
Well,
when a camera's floating, it seems like it would still move.
well, it's not floating. It's every time I take a shot, it's on a tripod at the bottom. It's grounded. The only problem I had with the mud is that the mud was moving. I'm walking along and all of a sudden I say, wow, that's it. I set the tripod down, put the camera on it, focus it, take a picture. So almost everything you've seen here, point and shoot. So it's a whole different way of photographing. It's an intuition. It's photographing for finding feelings. It's a whole, you know, people look at a 35, you know, their digital camera and they're composing the camera. If you want to learn how to photograph, put a piece of tape over the viewfinder. Don't use the viewfinder for a while. Best way to learn is with a pinhole camera. Yeah.
Will be, right there, Frank.
I'm next.
With all of the humidity, do you have much problems with the film swelling and shifting within the holder?
No, I really don't. The only times you really have problems is in the desert when there's no humidity. You can get lightning strikes from on your film because of the lack of humidity. Humidity seems to work really nice with the swamp, with the film. And it's black and white. Yeah. Everything I do is, I guess, I am a non-techie. I shoot everything. I process all the film at the same temperatures, same time. There's nothing fancy what I do. It's just waiting for the right light. That's the only thing fancy I do. Patience. There's no tricks involved.
We have your next question over here.
You're far right.
Thank you. You've already, I think, in part answered the question, but I was wondering if you ever used any high contrast film or infrared film or filters. You mentioned you shoot an orange filter and use T-Max 100, but you ever have any fun and kind of play variations on that to do any special things? Or?
Nope. Nature is so special you don't need it. Now I do a little. Sometimes I use a red filter. Now, people, the instruction books go on filters. You use a yellow filter for a medium sky, an orange filter for, a light sky, different filters for the sky, but they don't talk about the rest of the picture. Like Paul Harvey says, what's the rest of the story? So when you use a red filter, the grasses turn dark, leaves turn dark. And if you use a yellow filter, it kills the shadows because it kills blue. So I've discovered, I think my general filter is at orange, but on that one of Half Dome was a red. The one on the Moonrise that I did in the Big Sacrifice was red because I wanted the grass to go dark and the trees to go white. So in that respect, I do play a little bit.
Karen has your next question in the middle.
Right here in the center.
I need to hold it, sorry. Clyde, back in '94, you gave me a bunch of great locations, including Lake Gistapoka and some spots off Loop Road. There was one tree that I loved off Loop Road. 4 trips back, haven't been able to find it. If I email you the picture, can you tell me where it is?
Yeah, when you went down Loop Road, was it around the bend or before the bend?
It was from the western entrance. It was after you make the first turn, after you go down to the end and you hook to the left, after you get past that bad section of road. It was probably within a half mile on the inland side of the loop, and it's vanished.
Well, it could have vanished. Is it next to the road?
It was, originally I had to walk back into it, but I haven't been able to find it since. And I've done the loop from both directions, walked in, saw some gators that I knew, but otherwise haven't been able to find it. And it's a pretty specific tree. It was huge.
But that's one of the great things about the Everglades. Sometimes you can't find it and find new places. I mean, sometimes you find new places and you can't find them again. It's not visitor friendly.
The next question's all the way here on your far right.
In this digital world that we're now living in, are you finding it more difficult to obtain large format film stock?
Kodak has just discontinued T-Max 100 and 5x7 and 8x10. But Keith Canham, if you're into T-Max 100, Keith Canham, which makes the Canham cameras, is getting people together to get Kodak to make a special run. So I think it's going to be difficult finding films. Color is going to be worse. Colors, I mean, friends that I shoot 8x10 color can't find it. Fuji is not importing it anymore. You can buy it from Japan. An 8x10 sheet of color film is $40 a sheet. They're kind of discouraging, I think. Yeah. Anything else?
We have a question here right in the front.
Okay, good.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. You mentioned the story about how you went back to the place and you saw all these water moccasin carcasses that the fishermen had killed. Do you ever feel like that's something you would take a picture of because that would be a way to educate people too?
That's a really interesting question. People have asked me a lot, and well, it's not only that. It's like, dead machinery out there, junkyards, all the bad stuff. And I'm not sure it's completely right, but I try to just do the positive. Because if people don't have hope that there's something still there. I did a traveling show in, I guess, gosh, it was 1989 or 1990 for the Florida Historical Museum in Tallahassee. And I took the framed pictures up, and the person in charge there, they call it director, said, "Did your father take these pictures?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "This stuff doesn't exist anymore, does it?" And I said, "That's why I'm doing this, because it does exist and we want to keep what we've got." I mean, so I'm trying to say that we still have great stuff. There's still hope. Just got to get on the ball. So I'm trying to stay in the positive. Everything that I learned through my political contacts and all that stuff can be very negative. So somehow I have to try to stay positive in my work so that people feel there's hope.
Your next question's all the way over here. What is the harshest condition you've ever had to take a picture?
The hardest condition?
The harshest.
The harshest. It's really interesting. People, this is, I don't know if I should say this or not, but this is a show of extreme stuff, right? Yeah. Well, the Everglades is not extreme. It's probably one of the safest places in the nature to be. The only really scary thing is I'm standing out there in Babcock Ranch, about 1.5 feet of water, metal tripod, with an umbrella with a steel point, with lightning all around. But that would probably, and I had, like I said, I had my hairs come out, I had lightning come out of my fingers, and that's probably one of the scariest parts. I've had to knock a couple gators in the nose. you get a 12-foot gator coming up to you, you get your heart going. I mean, I turned around, and 4 foot away from me is a 12-foot gator looking at me. I mean, that nose is that wide. And what are you going to do? I was barefoot in a foot and a half of mud. I had photographed him with Elam had photographed him with a video camera. He was about from here, well, up here to you from us, maybe a little closer. And we were on a canoe with a video camera on a little air mattress. He got on all fours, growled, and jumped at us. And of course, when that happens, you take the camera and go, whoa, like this, because you don't lose the camera. And so we got back, we looked at the film. Before it went like this, he was underneath the boat. From when he moved to underneath the boat was 3 frames. It's 30 frames per second. So if a gator wants you, he's going to get you. So you just don't worry about it. And normally they like fish. That's the lawyers talking normally. But they like small stuff. I mean, when you're walking in the water, you're like a tree. One of the things you don't want to do, if possible, is swim. Because if you're swimming, you're hitting the water with your hands and your feet, and they'll think it's a fish. And they'll grab it and think it's a fish, not knowing there's 200 pounds or so on the other end of it. One of the most dangerous places is golf courses. People got their golf ball hitting the little lake there, and they go down and grab the golf ball, and they think it's a frog. Oh, boom. Lost a lot of golfers. The most dangerous place is probably a golf course.
We have a question for you all the way back here, please.
In the beginning, in the beginning, you showed a couple quotes, just inspirational quotes with regards to photography. What, back from the day when you saw Ansel Adams photographs and today, what is it that keeps you, the passion? Could you describe your passion and your style of shooting and what keeps you as an artist?
Well, one of the things that I must tell you about when I first saw Ansel Adams' pictures of redwood trees. Okay, I'm an architectural student. I'm saying to myself, why would you photograph a redwood tree unless the tree was for sale? So things have changed a tad since then. Well, like I say, I mean, the Everglades is a place where people don't go because it's very difficult to see. And I love the Everglades. I mean, it's the only place in the world like it. And you want to keep it. Global warming is going to eliminate the Everglades if we're not careful. I mean, that's, I'll get on that one. But Corps of Engineers in 1997 in Jacksonville gave my wife and I a tour of the facility. Over 2 days, 110 people gave us presentations. And one of them was about global warming. The Army is concerned about that. This is not the Sierra Club. So the passion for keeping our environment is really important. It took thousands, millions of years to get where we're at. I mean, how old are gators? 1 million years old? You know, I must tell you about, this is a kind of really off that subject, but I'll tell you a story about gators. People think gators are this frightening, stupid animals. Well, on Labor Day weekend, normally is about a week before Labor Day weekend is when they have their babies, they hatch. And one of the main things that the females do is protect the babies. And one thing the males have is to eat the babies. So, in our back pond, we have a nest right by the house. The mother gator is protecting their babies, and this little 12-foot gator, male, decides, well, he's going to check it out. And I'm standing with about 3 scientists, and they said, now watch this fight. It's going to be, the female is going to attack the male. It's going to be a big blow up. We're going to have water everywhere. So we're sitting there watching, and the male is just kind of cruising over, real nice and casual, and the female's cruising over towards him. She goes up to him and like touches his nose with her nose like he's kissing him. And for about, 10 seconds, and then she takes her arm, puts him around him, and just gently swims them away. It was the most loving scene you've ever seen. I mean, and the scientists said they had never ever seen anything like that. Most of the time it's an explosion. But you have to realize, they don't realize that this male and female been together for at least 10 years in this area. And they're a couple. He doesn't mind if other females come back, but if another male comes in the pond, he'll kill him or take him out. But it was amazing. He did it twice that day, and then he finally gave up, said, I guess I got the point. Not going to get anything next year if I keep this up.
Your next question's on the far right.
What do you think the most impactful experience in nature is for you, and how did it affect your experience as a photographer?
Well, when you go out to, I'm looking, when I go out in nature, I look for places that are not been disturbed. And when you see places that are in chaos, they are in order, biological order. And when I see that and feel that, it just overwhelms me with joy that there's something there that's still how it was 10,000 years ago. And then to be able to take that and show it to people, and I've really changed the opinions of almost all the politicians in Florida and the United States about what the Everglades is about for these photographs. And I think it's been really encouraging to keep doing this, to keep educating. And unfortunately, you got to keep educating every day. Something you just can't do once, you got to keep doing it. That's, I mean, that's one reason I want to do this show here. This is California. What's that have to do with Florida? Well, there's 100 senators and 400 and some representatives. So all the politicians need to know what's happening in the world. It's not just local, it's the world's round. And I've had a show in Europe and in Prague, the National Gallery there in 2000, celebrated the 2000. They were fascinated over in Europe. And I have a lot of customers in Europe. The Belgium PBS comes over and does a thing on me every once in a while, and BBC, and the Europe is interested in the Everglades. And it's Japan. Those are fun people, Japanese are. Anyhow, but it's exciting to be able to teach people about things that they can't see. We had Good Morning America, and God, every day they're calling. We want to have we're going to have waiters. I called every place in Florida. You can't buy waiters in Florida. Everybody wears tennis shoes and pants to go out in the Everglades. And so, if I get out here and the fellow, the scientist that did the program, said he'd done Everglades lots of times, in airboats and swamp buggies. First time he walked through it. First time he had a connection. And in nature, you got to get connected with it. And then, I should, okay. We'll go to a philosophy thing here about photography. One reason I do my pictures large is so you can't see them. Making sense? No? Well, it's because one thing I learned in architecture is I had a couple of really good instructors on how you see. You only see 5 degrees. So if I have this picture large, you get close enough to it, you can't see it. You have to experience it. You have to scan it. And that gives you the feeling of being there. So it's not because I have a big ego, which I might, you know, but that wasn't the reason to make big pictures. And so that's kind of a philosophy of the large photographs.
We have a question right here in the center.
Hi, Clyde. It's been a real pleasure this evening. In reference to your film that's hard to acquire, in my studio I've found that I've been able to freeze film for many, many years beyond the expiration date, and it seems to work out just fine. Do you do that? And how
I
does it work
have
after?
1,000 sheets of 8x10 freezer. I have 800 sheets of 12x20. I've got about 1,000 sheets of 5.7. So I've got freezers. Yeah, I bought the last 5x7 in the country about a month ago.
You're the one that did that.
A lot of people were upset.
Your next question's all the way over here.
Not to be completely ignorant, but I just want to know how your feet are doing with all the walking, and I want to know how many pairs of shoes you buy a year.
My feet, the doctor said, they look kind of weird. And what kind of shoes I wear? Oh, that's not too bad. I have 3 or 4 different pairs, so I have some leather. It depends on where I'm going, what kind of shoes. But basically, they're tennis shoes, and I have some actually leather walking shoes I use sometimes. Depends on if I'm going on a rock. But the water's clean. Come back, wash them out. You know, it's not a big deal. Now you start your underwear becomes browner as the years go by.
Karen, I believe, has the next question in the back. No? Okay. Then we have our next question out over here in the front.
What do you think is the most important part of your photography career?
What's the most important part of my photography career? I think it's when I started giving back to the community, sharing my work with the community, doing things that don't make money. And when you start doing that, it comes back. I mean, I've spent a lot of time on this particular show, you know, and all this whole show is everybody's done this for gratis. So it's when I started giving back to the community is when I think things started turning around. That's very important. To find in your local area, if there's a problem, you know, contact the Sierra Club, Audubon, Nature Conservancy, and see if you can help them. Without even thinking about getting money. That's not the way photographers really think, but it's the way I think.
I think we have your last question, second last.
I was wondering how you hold still with mosquitoes.
How do you hold still with mosquitoes? Well, in our swamp, when it's time to photograph, which is usually August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, there are no mosquitoes. There are none. Well, there's a couple. But I mean, there's nothing, I mean, you wouldn't even, we're in a system that's natural, okay? It's called mosquito fish, they eat the larva. We have a plant, it's called a bladderwort, that eats the larva. It's a carnivorous plant, it floats in the water. It rains enough to keep the bromeliads flushed out. The water is moving like a river. It's not stagnant like in New Jersey. So people come to our swamp walk in Labor Day, September. Now I can take you places in the Everglades. In 10 seconds, your arm will be black with mosquitoes, which I don't go there. And they have this mosquito spray, and they say, "We didn't see any mosquitoes. What's the problem here?" And so it's, like I say, it's about the easiest, safest place to photograph in the United States. There's more mosquitoes in the redwoods than there are in the Everglades. Have you ever been to the redwoods in June? You're running. I have 10-minute exposures in the redwoods, and I set the camera up, and it's solid. You know, you can have ground, so I'm walking around avoiding mosquitoes. Coming back on my camera, about time to close the camera, come back, and you know. So it's a whole different thing than you think of. It's weird. People don't understand that there's no mosquitoes. Now, it's out where we live, and that where we live is in a strand which the water's moving. When you go into a prairie where it's not moving, you can have mosquitoes. So it's just a matter of discovering what time of year there are mosquitoes here, what time there aren't, you know. And if there are, you just, like Fakahatchee, those ghost orchids, I can't use a mosquito net. I can't do that. So my beard helps. And I take bug spray, and I spray here, spray my clothes, and you have a little cloud following you, you know. So, but I can't handle those masks. There's a shot in there. I'm taking a crew of videographers out there. They all got these things on, and it's really kind of funny.
And I believe that Jessica has the final question.
No.
I think there's somebody. Do you have a final question?
Any more?
Well, then we might be.
Well,
all right, I will take this one right over here.
I was just curious, considering the expensive equipment that you had, how many cameras fell into the swamps?
It's not like digital. I've dropped cameras in. It's wood, steel, you know. You just take a hose, wash it off. The lenses, the big format lenses, you can actually unscrew them. You might lose a shutter, but you just unscrew the lens from the shutter, put the shutter on. I've lost like one shutter. It's not a problem. Now, I must say this though. If you're a photographer, and if you worry about your equipment, stop being a photographer. Because if you worry about your equipment, you're not going to do it. Because you're going to get in positions where you don't, particularly digital, I mean, drop those in the water, it's all over. Well, not all over, they're very expensive. That's what's great about large format, you have to really worry about it. You want to talk about the book signing?
I will. And on that very practical note, I just want to first off, just hold your applause for a second. I just wanted everyone to join me in thanking Clyde Butcher. But I also want to note that we will be doing a book sale and signing directly after this lecture. We'll be opening the door, so if you are interested, please, the lineup, kind of you'll see on the other side of the door. So that's behind you and on your left. If you brought something that you'd like signed, that's fine as well, but we are also selling books, or if you purchased a book earlier today, and Clyde has generously agreed to stay to sign books.
Have pen will travel.
That's right. And if you run out, and you know, if there's so many, we have a few too. So.
Okay.
But please do join me in thanking Clyde Butcher.